Joining us now, great friend of the show with a big announcement, Matt Stoller. Great to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you are taking your Substack, you're making it paid now. Talk about the differences, why you decided to make this move, and what this is all about.
Yeah, well, so I've been writing big for about 2 years, and I focus on the politics of monopoly and finance. And so what I'm doing now when I take it paid is I'm doing online communities, and I'm going to be investing in a lot more exposing of monopolies and giving away opportunities to actually talk to policymakers or affect policy. One of the things about the anti-monopoly movement is that it is actually one of the most successful political movements that we've seen maybe in the last 40 or 50 years. So we have
That's fair.
Antitrust enforcers who are supported by both parties that want to break up large dominant firms. And one of the reasons is because people on both sides of the aisle are learning about the problem of concentrated power. I've been tracking this for about 2 years in my newsletter. Before that, I wrote a book on it, and going to continue, going to expand, going to invest in bringing more content, more effective content, and exposing the monopolies, because that's actually how antitrust enforcers at a state level, at a local level, at a federal level can act.
You know, let me just say, I think both of us are paid subscribers already. Yep. And if you care about actually good journalism and supporting it, it isn't free. You have to invest in it if you're able to. And so Matt has been doing incredible work. It's been extraordinarily influential. It's been extraordinarily impactful. I could not recommend his newsletter more. It touches on all of the things that we care about here on this show, concentrations of power, the way that this town actually works. And as you said, it's one of the sort of few hopeful bright spots where you do have some genuine interest and genuine thought happening on both sides of the aisle. So could not recommend to you more. Of course, we'll put the link down below that you check out Matt's Substack, because it's incredibly important to understanding what is actually happening here in Washington.
I couldn't agree more, Krystal. And Matt, you've had a profound impact on my own thinking in your book, Goliath, which I also recommend if anybody wants to go check that out. And let's give people a taste of kind of some of the work that you do. Let's put this up there on the screen from your newsletter, the latest one. Economists to cattle ranchers. Stop being so emotional about the monopolies devouring your family business. What do you mean by that, Matt? What's happening here?
Yeah, so there was this, what's been happening over the last 5 years is we all know about big tech, right? Like Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple. In meatpacking, or the cattle and beef industry, it's the big four. Mm-hmm. So it's Cargill, it's Tyson's, it's National Beef, and they control 85% of the meatpacking. Now, if you look at the share of the retail dollar, so you pay about $6, $7 per pound of beef, that goes to the retailer, it goes to the packer, and it goes to the cattle rancher, the producer. In about 2015, about 35 cents went to the meat packer. Today, it's about $1.50. Whoa. And so what's happening? Wow. Yeah, no, it's about 15 to 20% of the price that you pay at the supermarket is a result of that meat packing consolidation. Now, the rancher, even though the price of beef is at a record high, the ranchers are actually going out of business because the packer is, driving the price to us up and driving the price to the cattle rancher down. Now, there's a lot of anger in Congress because the ranchers are politically powerful, and they are a right-leaning group, and they're now unified because they're desperate. Mm-hmm. So Chuck Grassley and John Tester proposed a bill to address problems in the market, and there was going to be a historic hearing. And then what happened, and this is the secret key to understanding power in America, is that a group of economists at Texas A&M and the USDA came out with a study that said, don't worry, everything is fine. There are no problems. This is all just supply and demand. And they came out with this study, and at this hearing, which happened last week or 2 weeks ago, the head of the committee, David Scott, said, well, now we know everything is fine. And so there was no consensus, and so they couldn't actually move any reforms of the cattle market. Wow. And so when you look at, and this is despite clear evidence, insider witnesses at these firms saying we are fixing prices with each other. So if you want to understand kind of the root cause of why our society is in chaos. Because it's not just that in beef packing, it's like that in kind of markets everywhere. I cover a lot of big tech, but I've also looked at things like medical supplies. I've looked at things like cheerleading. There's a monopoly in cheerleading. And it's all because these economists are saying, everything is fine. So that's really the key, is understanding that the economists, the sort of people that control the way our policymakers think, they are the ones saying, oh, you're too stupid to understand that, that market power isn't a thing. It's all just supply and demand. And so this was a great example of that, where they just, it's just totally crazy. And I expose that in this newsletter.
Yeah.
So why are they of the view that everything is fine? Do they have something to gain from saying everything is fine? Or are they just asking the question about the wrong group of people? Like, maybe these people over here who are already tremendously rich are fine, but how about everybody else feeling the effects downstream?
It's a great question. And, so there's a lot of ag universities that have new refurbished facilities with the name of, Tyson's and Cargill on there. And it all looks great when you go to these universities. And so these universities are often funded by, the big four. But it's hard to tell whether it's, a kind of a pay-to-play arrangement or whether it's just a religion. This is the thing about these kind of neoclassical economists. They really believe in what they're doing. Now, in this particular case, the economist who did this study that was effective, he said it cost $16 billion over 10 years if you made reforms to the market.
Sure.
He just manipulated the data, just straight up.
Wow.
And just took 15-year-old data that was not relevant and said, well, if you extrapolate this data forward, everything looks fine, because everything was fine in 2003. Which is crazy, because it's not 2003. The market is more consolidated. And then he even put in the paper, oh, and caveat, this stuff probably doesn't apply today. But the point, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But the point of the paper was to say, well, $16 billion over 10 years, and nobody was thinking about the caveats and the footnotes. It was just to give that talking point to the meat industry. Or the beef packing industry. Right. So it's just, this is what they do. They screwed up in the Google case in 2012. The economists are the reason we didn't bring a case against Google for monopolization. And the reason is because the economists said, oh, Google's not a monopoly. Also, in the changeover to mobile, nobody will ever really search for stuff on their phone. It's not like this is complicated stuff. This isn't like, oh, they make out the math a little wrong. This is blatantly stupid, either kind of rigged neoclassical ideas that are crazy. And these are the people who, they're at the Congressional Budget Office, so they control all the legislative scoring. They're at the Federal Reserve, so they control monetary policy. They are in the antitrust agencies. They are at the, in the agricultural agencies. They're in states. This is kind of the infestation of our thinking around political economy questions. And they intimidate policymakers, and they intimidate us into giving away our liberty.
This is really important. And sorry, A&M, where both my parents work. Strong connection, but looks like you're bought and paid for by the ag industry. Sorry to say that. It's literally in the name, agricultural mechanical. But I think the point that you're making is very important. We see this on our show all the time. We cover reality, as in people know the price is going up at the grocery store, and they're like, what is going on? They see that they used to have, some sort of optionality, and now that just disappears. Let's talk about that disconnect from this world of economists, because I think that's really important. These economists want you to literally not believe your own eyes. They want you to say, oh, your eyes are showing you that meat prices are actually rising, and you're crazy for even asking questions about that. And then that leads to all sorts of distortions in our politics, and actually a lot of cynical politicians who might say, oh, well, the reason why is, monetary policy or something, when it really has to do with something else. How exactly did this mindset kind of take over the government, take over all of our policy? Because what you're pointing to is that it's an outside philosophy, which has just become ingrained in the government. It wasn't always like this.
Yeah, no, that's right. This is a post kind of 1980 model of thinking about political economy, and it happened because of two movements. One on the right, which is the law and economics movement, which said we need to think about regulatory policy, and economics is a science. And so we need to think about regulatory policy and antitrust law and all these ways that we control the stuff that, how we make and move stuff. We have to do that according to these scientists. And that's why you saw a lot of innovation. That's when the Congressional Budget Office was created in the 70s, and the Fed became independent, and all these different, antitrust. So the right wing developed these tools at the University of Chicago. It's a narrow group. But then on the left, you saw the consumer rights movement. And it was a kind of quasi-socialist group that believed in kind of, well, we also believe that economics is a science. And we think that the most important thing, in fact, the only thing that matters is the consumer, consumer sovereignty. So how you do business is not important as long as you have well-regulated products and low prices to consumers. So this philosophy, and the right wing was like, absolutely, we'll take that. We love it. And so it's the elevation of the consumer above the citizen. So now, when all you see is the consumer, then it doesn't matter how anything is produced. It doesn't matter if it's made in China. It doesn't matter if it's made by one company. And so, we have this, like, I know you guys talk about the just-in-time manufacturing system and the consolidation of economic power. All of that happened because our philosophy said power doesn't matter. How we make things doesn't matter. Whether our rights as citizens don't matter. What matters is, are you getting cheap stuff as a consumer? Doesn't matter if the main street's getting ripped out. Doesn't matter if your union's getting busted or the farmers are going bankrupt. As long as the stuff is coming to you cheap, then it's fine. And now all of a sudden, the COVID hits, and the just-in-time manufacturing system, this perfect system, this highly efficient, globalized system goes haywire. And these economists who are dogmatic, this is their religion, they have nothing to say. They have no ideas. They have nothing to offer. They didn't see it coming, and they don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
That phrase, the elevation of the consumer over the citizen, I think is extraordinarily profound. Because if you think about, the Walmart is like the classic example, right? Walmart moves into town, Main Street is shuttered, the local wealth creation where it gets reinvested in the community, that all shuts down. Now it's all just being funneled down to Arkansas or, whatever your corporate conglomerate headquarters is. If it's not Walmart, wages are depressed, the unions are busted. So as a citizen, you have lost so much, but what's being offered in return is, yeah, but the prices are cheap. Like, what are you complaining about? Prices are cheap at Walmart, and that's good for working class people because you don't make that much money. So now you're making even less money, but the prices are the only thing that you're ultimately supposed to care about. I think that is incredibly profound, this idea of elevating the consumer over the citizen. So let's dig into a little bit more of what you're saying there with regards to the just-in-time inventory systems and how we're seeing this combination of supply chains breaking down, causing spikes in almost like random places in the economy. You've got rental cars are super expensive, and bacon, because of some, in part, animal welfare, but also the meatpacking plants is expensive, and all these different items have suddenly either become scarce or extraordinarily expensive. When you look at these things that are happening, what do you have to say about it?
Well, I've been doing a series called Shortage Watch, and I actually looked at, I predicted shortages in Wired.
Yeah. I was inspired by your, I did a monologue inspired by your work. Yeah.
Stop it. I wrote about shortages in 2010, or potential shortages, because we've seen them off and on. When there was an earthquake in Fukushima, that caused a bunch of shortages of random things like videotapes. And so it's not too hard to see when you're like, oh, just-in-time manufacturing, oh, pandemic shutting down a lot of stuff, we're going to have problems, right? So I started writing about that. And but one of the things that you see is you're always going to have problems when you have a massive shift in demand, like we saw with COVID, and supply stuff shuts down. But monopolies make the problem so much worse. They amplify it. And it's because it's a very simple reason. Monopolies are artificial bottlenecks, right? A monopoly is a bottleneck. And when you build a society and your policy framework around creating monopolies, which we have done but in specific ways, by changing all sorts of rules around pricing and what firms can do and can't do, so everybody now invests to get a monopoly. When you create a society with a bunch of monopolies, then something like COVID becomes an opportunity to price gouge, to slow things down. Instead of, we need to compete to grab market share by making things, by dealing with the supply chain. So just a simple example. So when you make vaccines, right, this is a piece that I did. When you make vaccines, one of the things you need fancy plastic bags. They're called, they're in the biopharmaceutical industry, but they're basically fancy plastic bags. And we don't have enough of them. Now you would think, okay, well, we don't have enough, to mix the chemicals and stuff. We don't have enough because we need a lot of them because we need to make this vaccine, and that's very important. But in fact, it's not so much that we don't have enough of these plastic bags, it's that the plastic bags are not interoperable with most of the mixing machines. Why? Because there's been consolidation in the last 15 years.
Right.
So it's like the Keurig coffee machine, right? If you don't have enough coffee pods. It's not that you don't have the coffee, it's that they have imposed an interoperability regime where you actually just can't use other coffee pods to hook it up. So, it used to be that.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you want to watch that full interview, we give our premium subscribers 2 full long-form interviews a month. That's one of the many benefits, but really what it is look, you guys help us keep the lights on here. Given the wild fluctuations on what gets monetized, doesn't get monetized on YouTube, prioritizing the algorithm, the only thing that we can rely on is you guys. That's why we are able to put on the show every single day that we want to. I already know that Epstein one is probably not going to make it, and the Don Lemon one probably isn't either. And the only way that we can make sure that we cover the news in exactly the way that we need to exactly for you is with your support to maintain 100% independence. So thank you all very much. I mean, we have a lot of benefits, show an hour early, long form interviews and all that, but this is really what it's all about.
Yeah. Love you guys so much. Have a great day. We'll be back here with a full show tomorrow. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.